Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
So hello and welcome to today's core webinar, Recognition Revolution, Fueling Employee Engagement for Organization Success. Our presenters today are Annie McManus and Caitlin Strunk. My name is Kim Heyer, and I'm with GP Strategies, and I'm really happy to be your host for today's session. But before I get started, I just want to remind everybody that a link to the recording will be provided in a follow-up email sent within 24 hours of the session today. You'll be getting that email, and it'll be coming directly from me. So be on the lookout inside your inbox for the next 24 hours. Also, if you're new to GP Strategies webinar, we do keep everyone's lines muted, but that doesn't mean that we don't want this to be as interactive as possible. So use the chat during the presentation. If you don't have access to the chat, you can use the emoticons add your comments and to engage with our presenters and also all of the other attendees. And if you do have any specific questions for our presenters, you can use the Q&A section to enter them. We'll be monitoring that during the session and either answer them, respond during the presentation, or get to them at the end of the webinar today. So again, I just want to thank you for joining our session, and I'd love to introduce you to our wonderful presenters for today. Our first presenter is Annie McManus, and she leads GP Strategies Employee Engagement Practice. She provides consulting and measurement strategy, data analysis, and partners with her clients to equip their employees to have more great days at work. And we also have Caitlin Strunk. She is a project coordinator with GP Strategies Employee Engagement Practice. She's facilitating engagement surveys, data analysis, consulting, expertise, and best practices for high engagement, in addition to quality reporting. So again, we have a really great session planned for you today. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to you two wonderful ladies.
Thank you so much, Kim. We appreciate you. All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. We're very excited to talk to you today about the importance of recognizing and really genuinely acknowledging our employees. This topic is near and dear to Kate's and my heart. Like many employees, we do know the benefits of quality recognition and also the impact when recognition is either non-existent or ingenuine. So we will begin today by defining recognition, discussing some barriers, exploring the impact of recognition and why it matters. And we'll wrap up with some tangible ways that we can recognize employees, followed by some Q&A. As Kim did mention, please feel free to use the chat throughout our time together. And we are excited to dive on in. So having spent my career really equipping our clients to effectively measure and act on employee engagement survey data, I have seen the impact of recognition, both through the data as well as anecdotally. We will dive into the metrics, the impact in a little bit, but first I wanted to share what we're really hearing from employees around this topic. So this quote on screen came from a recent client survey. Acknowledgement can be more rewarding than money. Now, what's interesting is this comment was provided in a section where we were asking about compensation. And some interesting history, really before the pandemic, before the most recent, inflation impact, we did regularly see compensation being selected or talked about as an engagement driver through more of an opportunistic lens. Of course, I'd rather get paid $5,000, $10,000 more for the same work I'm doing right now. Absolutely. What's interesting is, given the impact of the current market on employees, we've now seen compensation starting to be selected out of necessity. Employees are really talking about the impact of not being able to pay their bills, not necessarily able to secure a safe living location. So we're starting to see some real life implications and some change in the market, the way that employees are talking about this. On top of that, many organizations right now are either unable or not willing to adjust those salaries to reflect the current market cost. So we're actually seeing kind of a rub right now in the industry. Newly hired employees are making sometimes more than tenured employees because of the increase in starting salaries. We're also seeing some times now where managers are making less than their direct reports. And I mentioned we really are seeing that element of pain almost through this lens that employees are experiencing. Just like the comment we can see on screen here, Especially when employers are unable to really fully address compensation, it's paramount at a minimum that we increase our recognition efforts. So I do hope that we're able to figure out a longer term solution for society, of course, so our working lives can be more sustainable. Employees can truly achieve that work-life balance to just make it all work. But what's also interesting, so beyond this quote, we do see a desire for recognition increase, especially as employees are taking on more and more tasks and roles to compensate for lower headcounts that is existing in the workplace. So really those lower headcounts we started to see take hold around the time of the pandemic. But with emerging AI technologies, we're also now seeing employers start to make some decisions about streamlining headcount and really keeping that, on lock. Kate, I would love if you could share a story here. I know I've already started to speak maybe a little too much here because I get excited about this topic, but would you like to share a story about our impact of recognition here?
Sure. So I, of course, have this as a little note to remind myself, but anytime that we talk about recognition, I think about a prior employer. And this company I used to work for, 1,000 years ago, a tech company. And what they did, which I have never since experienced, we all had that Monday morning sort of touch base meeting, right? So all hands on deck, we'd go and we'd stand all together in one large room and we would run through some lists of anybody going out of office, anybody on site with clients, any big uh-ohs taking place on the IT side. And then towards the end of the meeting, they did what they called a kudos period.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually was the CEO who listed off items, but really it was the highest leveled individual that made the meeting. And I think that was kind of important too also. But so basically what happened was the prior week would close and all the managers would get together and they would shout out, "Hey, Annie did a great job this week. We had a client call in and talk about how good her customer service was over the phone." They felt personal and connected to that individual, right? You just did that amazing job. So the managers would pull all these little kudos together. And in this standing meeting of probably 50 of us, all different levels, the highest level employee, in this case, the CEO usually, would have this list and he would pull it out of his little pocket and he would say, "All right, here we go." And he would say, "Andrew, you did amazing. Your manager wanted to let you know that they saw you stay extra solely to help that client. And great job. We just wanted to make sure everyone heard this kudos." And I remember thinking how exciting that was. For me, I like to hear that I have done a good job, but more so than that, it made you feel like your name mattered because the highest person, it wasn't Annie, my direct supervisor, who was saying, "You did a great job, Kate." It was another manager who maybe I don't directly speak with, knew my name because I did that outstanding of a job. And every week that they did this, it was different people, right? Because different managers would go to that end manager meeting, different clients would call in. Occasionally, they even would like cold call a client to say, "Hey, you've been struggling. Is there anything you want to tell us about?" And that's when the client would be able to say good things. They may also say bad things. But the point was, you got to shout out, right? Imagine struggling on Monday. You just got your cup of coffee. You just walk into this meeting. You have no idea what they are about to give you.
Yep.
And you got a pat on the back. Like, how does that change your scope? How does that change any of the new employees that hear this? Maybe they try harder, or they think that if they make that impression on the clients, on the coworkers, on the managers, that they could also get recognized. It's just so genuine, that connection there. And it really, truly made up for some of the longer nights and some of the harder, difficult problems that we were paid to do, but it doesn't make it any easier, right?
Yeah, we often talk about the blood, sweat, and tears that sometimes goes on, like literally and figuratively. Hopefully not too much blood, because that's maybe a separate problem that we need to work on, some workplace safety, too many paper cuts in my role. But I love that. And that recognition across, it's genuine. We're leaning in. I'm feeling like I made an impact, and people, my colleagues, my peers, everyone across the organization gets that opportunity. So thank you for sharing that. That's such an amazing example of how that really came across in that genuine fashion and really felt good.
Absolutely. If you don't mind, I might have been doom scrolling this morning over my coffee, and you had mentioned AI technologies, and we all see them. And maybe some of us are a little bit nervous about how they're going to be taking on different roles and things. And so in social media, somebody had posted a meme that essentially said, "Man, AI, it's so great, right? It is taking on some of those jobs that we don't want to do." But what I really want it to do is not my artistic creative builds. I don't want it to design the album covers that I spend my day at work doing. I want it to do my laundry and my dishes. Like I want it to take, the struggle part and leave the passion part of my job alone.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be one of those evolving conversations as we figure out what's next with this new technology and really how it's able to do good things for us, but not take the creative. That's where the fun is. That's where the passion is. I agree. I love that. Oh, thank you. So in addition to what we've spoken about thus far, so we also see employees saying things like, we take pride in our roles. It feels like our role in the organization is not recognized for the importance it warrants. It seems like our people are secondary to organizational goals. So I do want to reinforce the importance. We do need to have strategic goals and priorities in order to move our organizations forward. Absolutely. But not at the cost of the people that are really needed to successfully achieve those goals. We also see some comments from recent surveys, things like, my manager has never recognized me for anything positive. I prefer he just leave me alone. Oof, I felt that pain when I read that comment. I was like, honey, I just want to give you a hug. Like I cannot imagine going through a whole career with that type of relationship and expecting to do amazing, incredible work in that type of environment. We also see a little bit more on the maybe neutral side, but I love my job. I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. I don't want to lose good people to other organizations due to cultural reasons, due to feeling like our department doesn't take care of us or care about us. So we will also in a little bit talk about the impact on retention, some correlation between, ultimately recognition and attrition, where we do see that in our data. But for right now, I think we've spent enough time on maybe slide 1 here after the agenda. So let's move along and take a look at how we define employee recognition. So ultimately, recognition is a common engagement driver, and most leaders know this, but doing it effectively is not easy. So we may see organization-wide practices, strategic recognition tools that can help, but ultimately we find that recognition works best when it is personalized and appropriate. So when you are looking to acknowledge behaviors, accomplishments that really can differentiate your people, your teams, ultimately your organization in the marketplace, you as that leader are able to fuel satisfaction on the job, as well as the ability for our people to perform, to contribute to those organizational needs. And ultimately, individuals do understand what they need to keep doing, and they're better able to understand those specific behaviors and skills, tools that they have to really continue that sustained organizational success. So we do have a few things on here that are shared, but I want to call out specifically timeliness, informal or formal, the acknowledgement of a person or team's behavior, effort, business result that really is supporting those organizational goals or values, and really looking to communicate those authentically where we do see that exceeding those normal expectations. When things start to suffer, when barriers get in our way, when systems go down, how were we resilient? How did we band together? How did we lean in with each other and really rise above whatever we're running into that day? So recognition can ultimately be a communication tool that reinforces and rewards those most important outcomes. And when we are able to effectively reinforce those, we are able to see the business impact there. Now, what is interesting about recognition is this can look very different for different employees. We know that employee engagement is an individualized equation. And as managers, we need to be aware of those unique needs and talents of those that are reporting into us, so we really can lean in and support those individuals on our team. I do recognize, especially when we have large team structures, I am one person responsible for 50 people. How do I really get to know those people in depth? It will take time, it will take dedicated focus, But I think that's important for organizations to remember is many times we load up our people leaders with the paperwork, the process, the moving everything along. But again, keep in mind the people. You have to lean into the people in order to really see those business outcomes succeed. So I think it is important for us to really lean in, understand where that recognition is deserved. Is it genuine? Kate, the story you shared, a moment ago, that felt genuine. It didn't feel forced. It's not like, well, today we need to talk about 3. I need 3. Someone else email in one more thing that we can say. It felt genuine. It felt timely. I think all the things we want to see when it comes to recognition. So again, I really appreciate that story. I think too, when we think about the personalized impact, understand the needs of your people. Some people may want the handwritten note. That's meaningful. I'm able to hold on to that. That's something tangible that I can refer back to and really feel, see the stack of amazing kudos notes increase over time. When I'm having that rough day, reflect on a time when things were working better and we had that good moment. And I had that amazing feedback from either my boss, a peer, someone else in the organization. Some people may want more public recognition, the shout out on a team meeting, the boss copied, the boss's boss copied, kind of up that chain. I do think it's important, though, to understand people have different desires for different lenses of recognition. So we do want to make sure we talk about that. Absolutely. The last thing I will call out on this slide is that box down to the bottom right. So when employees take a calculated risk or make a well-intentioned mistake and fall short, we need to recognize the effort there and reinforce the positive behaviors. Did they follow a certain process well? Did they, lean in and do their research in this area, whatever that may be? I think we do need to better acknowledge and reinforce, it's life. Things don't always go perfectly. They don't succeed. So how can we provide that genuine acknowledgement, especially in those moments where maybe quote unquote success did not necessarily happen? And I know Kate will talk more about this later, but we also want to make sure we're not just giving blanket statements. Great job. What what does that mean? Great job. Okay, thanks. Like, with what specifically? Who was involved? I think the more specific we can be when we are providing recognition, the better. Kate, would you like to add anything else here before we take a look at some barriers?
No, I think that's a great starting point. And I know we had a couple of really good shout outs in the chat as well. Just other ways to start the process of having recognition and how to be genuine.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, Kate, I will officially kick it over to you to talk about some barriers.
All right. This will be more brief, much easier, because I think these are a little
There's
bit
clearly one verbose person on the call. We know who it is.
I'm here for smiles. It's cool. Okay, so up to this point, we have kind of defined recognition. I think everyone has a good idea of at least one or two things that they could do to actively recognize individuals, teams, management, that sort of thing. We know what it means to acknowledge those people, but what gets in the way of effective recognition? We've got a beautiful list here. Thank goodness, it'll keep us focused. So we have lack of time. Obviously, that is self-explanatory to a certain extent. I do want to build on that and simply say, everyone has those days where daily work just gets in the way. Maybe it's not that it's a lack of time, but you have so many P1s for the day that P2s wait till tomorrow. And sometimes recognition is the thing that kind of just keeps getting pushed, right? Until you don't realize that it's not part of your day-to-day anymore. We've got lack of a clear plan or organizational support. In that, I would say redundancy can be not a positive thing, right? We've all experienced the pizza party. First one, awesome. Second one, not so bad. Maybe the 7th one, we're wondering why this counts as recognition, and maybe we don't want pizza. Maybe we don't want food. Maybe Caitlin wants individual commentary. Maybe Annie doesn't want to be shouted out, but she'd like a little personalized email coming from management saying, hey, we see you. You did a great job this week, and overall, your work has been stellar. Things like that can be very beneficial. If you don't have organizational support, that could be as simple as reimbursement. Maybe management at one point in time had a stipend to utilize to help recognize employees. I know I have managers who prefer to do a personalized gift. Maybe it's a cute candle, maybe it's a funny shirt, things that bring me joy because I'm 100% remote. So it can be a little bit more difficult, right, to connect with me. But if you don't have that stipend and everyone is struggling with compensation, money is going to become an issue in that. So you have to kind of find ways that are free or cheap or not monetarily based to work around that lack of organizational support. We've got our inconsistent recognition. What I mean here is very simple. With no tracking set up, did everyone get invited to the pizza party? Did Annie get 17 kudos last week, but Kim got 1? And maybe there's 4 other people on the team that are doing their best, but we need to check in with them also. Everyone should get recognized throughout a process. No, it does not mean that we want to give out participation trophies, but there is a sort of give and take in that realm. We've got limited manager visibility, which would be managers maybe not having enough direct interaction with or visibility into the daily work environment for their team members, especially if your team is larger or, like I said, remote work environments. Annie might be able to see that my lists are being checked off, but she doesn't know what my day-to-day looks like. So she might not know that I'm running around like a crazy person 100% of the time. And I have 17 windows open on 4 monitor setups right now just to keep it cool. She has no idea about that. So maybe she doesn't realize that I am in desperate need of recognition, right? And then we end with the discomfort in providing feedback. We've all been there. We feel awkward, we feel uncomfortable. Maybe I'm better at giving compliments than I am receiving them. And so that can come out in different ways. A lot of these items can lead to just a lack of awareness about individual contributions and achievements, resulting ultimately in missed opportunities for recognition. It doesn't always have to be that huge, big $4 million contract that you signed. It could also be that you are now known for responding to your clients within an hour of receiving an email. That's also huge. That's also great for business. And that's something that if you learn about my day-to-day, you as a manager would be able to see and be happy and excited about.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something you said just sparked. I had seen a story about, I forget what organization it was. I think it was retail space. They had, 5 billion in revenue, whatever ridiculous, amazing number. Good for them. Happy, stoked. Yay. They gave each employee a cookie with a sticker on it that said, "We did it."
Did you see about the airline? There was an airline that posted such a high revenue that they ended up giving bonuses to their employees, roughly 8 months work of payment as a bonus. Now, obviously, that is a very 0.5% of the whole population doing well enough to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But even seeing that, it makes me excited for the turn of employee recognition, right? That's huge. For a company to do that, those employees are staying.
Exactly.
No need to
It doesn't have to be monetary, but if you're going to do monetary, do it big. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Obviously, there were plenty of other factors in that, but that is huge, right? Let's ask a poll.
All right, let's
I
do
feel
it.
like those are enjoying. I like them. So there should be a poll that pops up. There it is. Perfect. That was very surprising. I never do polls. This was so great job, Kim. I loved that. How does your company currently recognize employees? Are we talking no formal recognition program? Do we have a little bit? Maybe sometimes yes, sometimes no. Or do we have a formal recognition program? And when I say formal, I mean people know about it. They know how to dive in. They know what they're working for. They've got awards. Maybe there's bonuses yearly if you're lucky. Maybe there's a system itself where people can log in and send out recognition notes.
And I'm seeing some results come in. I did just want to share. Someone chatted us. This is a news story. I can't click on it. I'm going to disrupt my whole screen. But the headline is employee gets baked potato as Christmas bonus from the company and pays tax on it. Oh, no, that has gone wrong. That is efforts gone wrong. That is the what not to do. Oh no. I'm excited to read that article once we get off. Well, right now, in terms of our data, it looks like we have about 46% of our respondents on this saying we have a formal recognition program, about 38% looking at some form of recognition, kind of those light recognition efforts, about 15% with no formal recognition program. So I think that's amazing to see that spread. It's always interesting to me too, organization size, industry, what the history is there, where we do feel that that's important. Kim, would you be able to just share those results to everyone so everyone can see where we landed? I think we are good to close that right now. But I think that's really important to understand the spread. Yes, we can still recognize our employees, even if the organization itself does not have formal processes and structures in place.
Annie, I clicked on the baked potato ad.
You clicked on the baked potato?
Okay. I need this to be part of this webinar. So you all have to suffer for a moment. So yeah, this person, there is an article and it gets worse, Annie.
Oh,
so
no.
they gave literally a potato and they claimed it had a $15 value. And so you had to pay taxes on that. But wait, there's more, in case you were wondering. The individual who received this potato acknowledged that the potato bar was an improvement over the gift of a 30-minute video conference call with the company executives from the year before. Wow.
Oof.
Okay. So
I'm sorry to interject here, but that must have been some potato to be
Some
worth
potato.
$15. Sorry.
right. Okay, because first, are we really calling the value of a baked potato literally $15? I don't care where you are. Freaking
Even with
food.
shipping and handling costs to get that to each employee potentially.
But this article, like, it's so important, right? Because here's the thing. Bad recognition also happens. You do not get participation points for it. It will be remembered longer than good recognition. It just is that way, right? Yes, trying is important, but also maybe ask a bunch of people before you buy hospital potatoes as your improve, because honestly, people probably would have preferred a $15 Starbucks gift card.
There you go. There you go. It's so true. It's so true. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you to our participant who shared that article. We are thrilled to be able to experience that together. I don't know if maybe the employees were as thrilled, but I do know we are needing to move along. So why should we care about employee recognition? So I want to talk a little bit about how we define engagement and what we believe the role of each employee is here. So on the left here, you can see our X model of employee engagement. Essentially, we have two different paths. We have the organization on its path to success. We have clearly defined organizational values, goals, and a strategy to get there. What we need from each employee is a level of maximum contribution, working on the right things, providing that level of discretionary effort, giving it all, maybe not always blood, sweat, and tears, but having that focused effort to really look to consistently achieve. On the other path over here, we have each individual, each employee coming to work every day. Now, we each have personal values. We have our goals. We have sometimes a strategy to get there. I know Kate's coming up on vacation, so I think the strategy might be a little bit looser today. It's more of just get through it and look forward to future and fun things ahead. But many days we do have a strategy to get there. Now, the intersection of this is really on the job. This is where this comes together. So we could have people that are fully engaged. I know exactly what I should be working on. I'm providing that discretionary effort. I like the work I do. I'm satisfied to work here. I'm proud of this organization. We may also have a number of other different cases going on here. The polar opposite of that full engagement is going to be disengaged. We are not seeing that level of satisfaction nor contribution working or working well. we could, on the left side, see the satisfied and not contributing group. So many times we do see either new employees in this space. I am so excited to be here. I have no clue where the bathroom is, no clue where the water cooler is, no clue who I'm supposed to talk about to do anything and what really I'm supposed to do, but I'm happy to be here. We also could see what we call retired in place employees there. So I am very satisfied giving this comfortable level of contribution. It does happen. We know there's going to be a spread across as we look through our workforce. Over to the right, the opposite from what we just looked at. So this contributing and not satisfied group. We often refer to this as the crash and burners because you can only live with that level of imbalance for so long. Giving, 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 but not having your own needs met, not having those growth opportunities, not having a compensation that works for you, the working conditions, all of those things that do impact engagement might not be working. So one of two things typically happen with those folks. We're either going to pull down to this level of disengagement. I'm not getting what I need from this employee-employer transaction. I'm pulling back on all that extra effort I've been doing. Or you may choose to leave the organization to go somewhere else. Now, the other group I did not yet speak about is our almost engaged. So just like our fully engaged folks, they know great days at work, they experience them. They may not experience them as regularly. So per our survey, they're agreeing to the survey items that plot us on this model, but not necessarily strongly agreeing. So just a bit of that power of difference there. Now, I also want to address the model to the right. So this is what we call our IME model, shared responsibility. This is anchored in engagement, but I think it's also pertinent to when we talk about giving that feedback, providing that recognition, there's a clear line there as well. Ultimately, we do see individuals as responsible for their own engagement. I truly am the only one that knows what those personal values, goals, and strategies are for what I'm trying to achieve in my life. So I need to be aware of those. I need to have ownership of them, and I need to make sure to communicate those as appropriate to my manager and leaders. The manager is really then going to act as that connector, breaking down barriers, making sure our workflow is as efficient as possible, breaking down those redundancies. If we have some collaboration issues with other teams, working and fostering those relationships so that we can do our best work. At the same time, those people leaders are people as well. So they also need to attend to their own engagement. And top of house, as we look at our E's or executives, our senior leaders, really setting the cultural tone for how we do business, how we recognize employees or don't, what we're going to focus on as an organization. And I think it's important to understand there are so many different factors that impact engagement. Inside of work, it could be the team dynamics, how we communicate. Is this work really meaningful for me? Do I have the autonomy and empowerment that I need? And so many other things. But we can also think about the things outside of work that impact engagement. How is my overall well-being, physical, mental, financial? Are my hobbies and interests, number one, do I have time for them? Am I able to do those things that I love to do? And what is the time dedicated to that? Family dynamics, social, friends, all of that. The economic situation. Kate and I did a recent training where we ended up spending entirely too much time talking about all the things that can impact engagement because there are so many things that can impact engagement. Now, I would love if we could chat in, what is your current engagement level? So are you more on that, I'm satisfied, but a little bit lower on the contribution? That's okay. We do not judge. We love and accept here. Do not worry. Are you feeling that engagement? Are you feeling more in the crash and burn, that contributing and not satisfied side? Or is it one of those days where you are just getting through? You might be sitting in a little bit of disengagement today. Now, while we are chatting in and kind of picking those current levels, I'd love for you to also just reflect on how this could be impacted if you did get more recognition, more personalized recognition. And I think the other thing I want to share about this model too is do keep in mind, this is moment in time. I can walk into work, and trust me, it's happened on occasion, fully engaged, going, today's the day. I have my list. I know exactly what I'm going to do. It's all going to work out. Everything's going to be gravy. And then the fire drill comes in from left field. This system breaks. This stops working. Everything's going on in different ways. So I do want to acknowledge that we can move around this model daily, weekly, monthly, that can absolutely shift our impact there. Oh, I like this. We did see a comment come in here about, I'm feeling engaged and I am contributing, but there's some organizational issues limiting satisfaction right now. I think that's very fair. We've all been in that organizational space where some of those barriers barrier a little too hard some days.
feel like stronger berry on some days. Some days it's like a kid fence and you just got to jump it. But
Exactly.
man,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Some days it's the I'm laughing so I don't cry. And other days it's like, I just need to cry and get it out. Oh, I
Yeah,
love seeing some
absolutely.
great stories here too. We're seeing some people with that are feeling engaged. They're having great leadership, great culture. People are working successfully together and really helping you in your role. That's amazing. I'm glad to see it.
I'm hoping we have some managers on this call. But I did want to talk about Tonya because I feel like this is a great kind of segue into talking about the different types of recognition. They don't all have to be a prize, right? They don't all have to be that sort of gold star piece of paper. When Annie mentioned earlier, we were at a client site doing some training on engagement and the best way, to kind of go about that. One of the managers sort of shouted out and said, "Hey, actually, I have this great story. Let me tell you about it." So she noticed just a regular day that one of her employees, one of her direct people, seemed kind of off, seemed kind of stressed, really just not 100%. And so she pulled them aside and said, "Hey, is everything okay?" And this individual was having some personal difficulties that they didn't really feel comfortable like being away from. And so she said, "Hey, why don't you know what? We have sick days, we have personal days for a reason. Why don't you take the rest of the day? Why don't you go be where you need to be?" And this employee basically said thank you and left, right? They had a lot of things going on that they needed to deal with. And they came back 2 days later, 100% engaged because they felt seen and heard. And without having to say, "Hey, I do need to take a personal day," for whatever reason, they felt obligated to come into the office. That manager saw that situation, offered to step in and help that person. And because of that simple recognition, that employee came back rearing to go because the manager cared. And I don't know about you all, but kind of being seen, even on a virtual machine, matters so much more than people give it credit for. I just felt like it was important to say that.
Definitely. So I will acknowledge one of our concerns in preparing for this was, do we have enough content to fill the time? And we just got reminded by Kim, we are down to 8 minutes left, so we need to keep trucking. So let me crank through these next few. So we do have some data we want to share quickly, really talking about, we anecdotally talked about the impact of recognition so far today. This comes from our research. So our research and client data, over 50,000 respondents across many industries, financial services, professional services, government, retail, insurance, and energy, to name a few. Ultimately, through all of these elements, we are seeing a strong connection, strong correlation between recognition and these types of outcomes. So we've spoken about attrition a few times today, planted that seed. Ultimately, when employees are not receiving recognition, they are 3 times more likely to leave their organization. We do also see the connection, not only with that attrition, but with engagement. Employees who are receiving recognition, twice as high in terms of those engagement levels. We see, of course, as we know, we do define engagement as this combination of satisfaction and contribution, as we just saw a moment ago. We see where regular recognition is happening. We see higher job satisfaction. We're seeing 87% compared to 54%. Those are huge differences just by reporting that I receive regular recognition from my immediate supervisor. We also see that clarity on immediate work priorities. Do I know what I'm supposed to be doing? Huge difference there again. Now, beyond that, we also do have some other highly correlated items. Just wanted to share these more briefly than I intended to initially. But essentially here, we are seeing the impact of employees that receive recognition. Now, the data we're looking at here is going to be favorability data. So on our 5-point Likert scale, we have agree and strongly agree responses, which is what we're seeing here. The only difference between these two columns is this first column is where employees report that they receive recognition, and the second column is showing that favorability when employees do not receive recognition. So we're able to see the difference, the delta between those two numbers, and really understand the impact of recognition. So when I do receive recognition, I am more likely to have this regular specific feedback about my performance with my manager. My manager is being able to really encourage me, ask for that feedback, and really incorporate and act on the input I'm providing. We're seeing better talent utilization. Interestingly, people have higher and stronger perceptions of career opportunities at the organization when they receive regular recognition. There could be two people, and the only difference is that recognition factor. I think I have career opportunities because I'm getting that feedback. I'm having that open dialogue. I'm engaging in these types of conversations where my manager sees me, recognizes me, sees my talents, and therefore I feel invested in this organization. It's just that perception difference. So that was really interesting to me. Even as we think of the impact multiple layers up. So not every employee is going to regularly interact with senior leaders, but we do see an impact on these types of questions. Belief that the senior leaders have created a high-performing work environment. They're communicating effectively. And we even see this difference between liking the work that I do as well. So just because it's the simple difference of recognition and the power of recognition, we're really able to see that impact. Now, this is another quote. So my word of caution here, the reward. I'm now trying to move too fast. I forget how to speak. The reward for good work is not more work. It is compensation and recognition. So I'm going to just turn this over to Kate in a very short second to talk to us about some tangible things. We'll get to the Q&A very shortly. But essentially, we need to understand that many times organizations are going to go, you did a great job. Here, can you take this report? Can you add this to your list? You did that so well. Let's build, and give you more. There's a turning point for now. My workload is no longer working for me. You've changed the working conditions. You've changed the work that I'm receiving. So I may not like this work as much. Just because I'm good at something does not mean that that's all I want to do in this world. So I just want to provide that word of caution of we do need to acknowledge that. We need to make sure that we're providing that recognition in a positive way. And I had a whole spiel on Maslow's hierarchy of needs here. I am going to have to cut out my good friend Maslow here, but we know the impact of that hierarchy of needs, being able to really lean into that. And there's so many benefits when it comes to that. So 3 minutes left. Kate, can you do your best to bring us through this slide, the next slide, and we will wrap up with a couple questions.
All right. Okay. Ways to provide effective recognition. We've talked about the personalized approach. We've talked about timely and specific feedback. Although for that one, I would like to point out that what we mean is, did this happen this week? Awesome, let's talk about it. It's the same thing as a grudge, right? If I made a mistake 4 months ago and you are talking about it right now for the first time, we have other issues. We are not going to be able to remember the specifics that happened way far ago. But if I did something good this week and you immediately turn around and say, hey, great job, you did awesome on this one thing, I'm going to remember that, and it's going to help continue to shape how I bring myself to work the rest of the time. Got peer or top-down recognition, like with my kudos story, sometimes it feels more genuine to hear it higher up in the chain than just a simple peer-to-peer, although that doesn't take away from a good peer-to-peer conversation about that.
Yeah, someone in the chat had shared about roundtables and having that impact there. So that can be very beneficial when done right. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we have, I'm sure everyone knows it, the reward and incentive programs. Hey, money, compensation, awesome. Love it. Please give me more. We also understand that it can't always be monetary. So we want to find ways to work around that also. And then aligning recognition with values and goals. Sometimes you're doing great and you do want a little bit more work. You do want to be challenged more. I got gifted this beautiful webinar because I enjoy thought leadership and I enjoy having these conversations. So as a part of a recognition, this is something that I asked for.
And thank you.
But more specifically, what not to do. We don't do generic praise because that feels like a participation trophy. That delayed acknowledgement, we don't wait weeks and weeks to say, hey, good job, because it feels like you're doing this because somebody told you had to. We don't try to ignore employees or cause favoritism. Yes, there is always going to be a star pupil, but those other folks are doing good and they deserve to hear that recognition as well. And
And given the correlation we saw, if you can foster maybe those quote unquote lower performing, less visible people, what is the impact that you can have by recognizing their quote unquote smaller behaviors? They're less visible, those well-intentioned mistakes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Feeling seen always matters. And obviously, insincere acknowledgement. I don't want a pat on the back that's the exact same pat on the back I get every Thursday afternoon because it doesn't mean anything.
All right. So with that, I think we are exactly at time.
Yes, and I understand if people have a hard stop, but I'd really like to get some of these questions answered. So they'll be on the recording. If you can't stay, you can listen to them later. But while we have Annie and Caitlin's attention, I do have a few questions. I have one question here that is there a specific tool you use to figure out how people or teams prefer recognition, or is it just a matter of talking to your employees? Or your
So
team?
on the engagement survey, there are ways we can collect that information, but I think that it is best done. We typically through our process, we recommend both team conversations to really understand the nuance of teams, but also the one-on-one conversations to understand those unique talents, what people specifically need. So with the asterisk that we understand that you may have many people reporting into you, we do think it is best to have that conversation because you can really flush out what is important, what matters to me. And through those one-on-one conversations, you get to know each other better. So then you can start to make some informed assumptions about what people do need. But I think best face-to-face. With that said, you can always look for more types of collection, feedback, elements, and routes to be able to explore that.
Also, I've worked at companies where they had it as part of an onboarding package. So the direct manager sent out a little survey, and on there it said, hey, these are the 3 things we normally do. Do any of these 3 things really stand out for your preferred recognition? Or do you have something not listed? It makes it almost like a safe space, but also it's something that the manager can easily refer back to if they need to be reminded months down the line.
Great. I like that. I like that little tip about adding it to when they get hired. So here's one that says, what if I'm not a manager and I'm looking for tips or guidance to share with my manager so that they can better support and recognize me?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I think what I would say, if that employee standpoint, we have spoken very much through the lens of people leader today. I think if you are an employee, I'll float us back to that shared responsibility model. Ultimately, what you need and your needs, we want to hope that you're empowered and have that ownership over it. So I do think being able to articulate what's important to you. There are sometimes managers that will cancel those one-on-one meetings. And because, oh, we don't have anything to chat on. I would encourage you to push back and say, actually, I do want to lean in. I want to talk about some things that are very important to me. So I know that that is something that develops over time, and not every working relationship can necessarily have that authenticity. But I would really encourage you to be able to vouch for yourself, speak up for yourself, and lean into what's important to you, because you are the person that's in control. So,
Caitlin, do you have anything to add? Or are you good?
I think the only thing that I would add is I'm a big fan of not directly saying things like, manager, I'm going to need you to do this because this is a requirement for me personally. I feel very awkward about that. So I usually approach it as like on a meeting, like a weekly meeting we have with the manager. I would go, Annie, oh my God, my friend works at this company and this is what they're doing. What do you think about that? And truly just offer a crafted story to have the solution within it, because then it's not from me. This is a whole other company and they do it.
And there are a lot of people who don't like to do that confrontational thing with their manager. They're afraid they're going to upset them. So that's a really good point, Caitlin. I know that here at GP Strategies, we do have our conversations and we take it very seriously that our managers do keep them. And I do find that even though I talk to my manager regularly, I do find them to be a point where we focus on me and what I'm doing and what I can do. And then
It is rare to have the manager say, what can I do better to help you?
Yes.
And I do think that that would be a great question to start adding back into those connection meetings.
Great. I have a couple more questions and then I swear we can wrap this up. How do you balance monetary and non-monetary recognition?
That is going to be a tricky one and very dependent on the organization. So there will be some organizations, we have spoken directly with our clients where they do have a stipend for each manager, for each employee that reports to them. Those may be better easily able to lean into the monetary. We have other organizations that we work with where they have a set bonus structure. There's certain metrics, achievements, key numbers tied to where I can do that monetary. I think it is very important to work within those specs. With that said, if you cannot provide the monetary, we do know the value of monetary. It does make a difference. Again, gift card versus potato, please, based on our story earlier. But I think especially where the organization may not have some more of those formalized approaches, we need to lean into the non-monetary. So those conversations, especially between your people, what they're looking for, is it loud recognition? Is it quiet recognition? The nuance there is going to be so much more important, and those conversations are going to be so much more important.
I think also it's okay to say, oh, we don't have a budget for this, so I'm gonna do this instead. I guarantee you the employees know that there's no budget when there's no budget.
Yeah.
So instead of pretending or just not saying it, just be straightforward because it makes you more truthful, right? So just acknowledge, man, wouldn't it be so great if we got bonuses in what month is it? In June? No? Okay. That's just not something the company has available, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you can't still send me a thank you card.
Yeah. Well, you don't get what you don't ask for sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, just a final question, of course. What do we need to do to implement a successful recognition program within our organization? I guess, where do we start? What do we do?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that's really important is to understand the needs of your employees. If you do not currently have an employee engagement survey or a way to regularly measure feedback, I think that is important to establish. While I mentioned the benefits of the larger feedback mechanism versus more direct conversations, there's pluses and pros and cons for each approach. But I think being able to really understand what's important, priority order, those can be very beneficial to really help the organization move forward. So meet your people where they are, understand the specific needs. I think there are going to be some tough conversations at that more senior level. Do we want to go down a full program when it comes to this? There's a number of great resources out there that do have full recognition programs. We could lean into that. Do we want to create the monetary structure where we are leaning into that type of conversation? Do we want to equip our managers to have these types of conversations, set them up for success? So I think it does start at the top with the executives. I mentioned setting the cultural tone, what we're going to focus on. So we need to understand what is the organizational's appetite for that. But I think, again, even without that, especially in organizations that may choose not to do that, or we don't have the dedicated resources, whatever those barriers may be, leaning into what we can do now, leaning into what you can do in your environment. So I both did and did not answer that question.
I think
just
think
like
it's just-
Kim said,
Mm.
asking sometimes, right, is a great first step. If I am a lowly employee, I maybe don't know if we have a record. Maybe my manager doesn't do anything, but the company actually does have a recognition program. So sometimes truly shooting a message to HR. Hey, do we have this? Is this something that we've talked about? Maybe that's a great first step too, to get the ball rolling. Because again, like Kim said, if you don't ask, nothing's going to change.
Mhm.
And I love this chat we just got in. Last note on this one. Someone says that we do not have budget, but we do have they've deployed self-funding initiatives, creating opportunities for team building, collaboration, networking, cash generation. And the cash generated from those, we use that to fuel awards, prizes, and support the business case for broader investment. So I think, understand some organizations, especially in large organizations, you may not be able to influence top, but you can do those ground efforts, what we can do within our area, leaning into that. So thank you so much for sharing that. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's great. And okay, I know we are above and beyond time, but what a great discussion. I want to thank you both for it. And of course, I want to send a big thank you to everyone joining us for your time and attention. And I do ask at the end of this session, if you take a minute to fill out our survey, because we want your feedback to make our webinars even better. So we hope you'll join us again for another one of our upcoming webinars. Be sure to go to gpstrategies.com and look at our upcoming sessions. And I wish everyone on the call a wonderful and productive rest of your day. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.